And apparently, you know, it's alleged that you know, they would go to Tim Hortons and they would be spitting in their cups, and they would be, you know, saying some pretty awful things to these people. And so the people from Six Nations said, okay, we just won't shop in Caledonia anymore. We'll go to another town and shop. And Caledonia almost went under. And Marie Traynor, who was the mayor at the time, I don't know if she still is, was really pissed off. Like, you guys, you guys are putting my town under. She put her town under by not speaking in support of the Six Nations and what they were trying to do, by speaking against them, and by egging on the people in her community to be aggressive against the people from Six Nations. They stopped shopping there. And people in Canada don't understand how economically tied we are together. Where do you think my community shops? It shops in Sutton. That's the local town. And if Sutton alienates the people from Georgina Island and they go to Brecken, Sutton's going to go under, because we spend everything that the community generates, about $10 million a year, you know, or maybe more in economic revenues. It gets spent in Sutton. It goes into the banks in Sutton. If Sutton says, well, we don't want these Indians around here anymore, that's $10 million less in their coffers, and this is not a big town, right? So we all, you know, you said earlier, how are we ever going to see this idea that, you know, can people actually work together and be unified in Canada? Well, I think that when people really understand the implications of not being together, whether it's an immigrant population and we don't want to serve people, or we don't want the Chinese community moving in here, or we don't want the Ukrainians over there, you're saying to yourself, we don't want to have economic, you know, initiative, and we don't want to have a businesses built in our community that's going to help us, right? Take it somewhere else. You know?
I just lost my question. Okay. How do you think people can educate themselves? I mean, obviously I came to university to learn, but not everyone has, you know, $10,000 to throw away in a year. I mean, most people don't read the newspaper. Like, how can people educate themselves?
And how do you educate the kids?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to, I mean, I've been pushing for a long time to Canada, including universities, to do public education. And do public education that's palatable to the masses. Like, don't, you know, I mean, I don't know whether it's like interesting commercials, or, you know, whether it's just having PSAs, you know, 30 seconds, you know, but they need to do something that actually, and maybe they need to support initiatives like the Canadian Roots Exchange, where they actually create the opportunity for young people that maybe aren't in university. But so, for instance, Havergal is a girls' high school, and Havergal met with us last night, and they want to do an exchange and take their girls up into Wikwemikong, into one of the other communities, so they have an opportunity to engage with those students from that reserve. You got to support stuff like that. I mean, the Royal Commission spent $51 million on what is right and wrong with the Aboriginal community, what people need to do with I don't know how many, 144 recommendations. One of those recommendations was to establish an exchange process between young people, because young people are not so cluttered up with stereotypes and negative feelings. You know, they get there, right? But they're not so cluttered up. Get those young people to come together and teach each other about each other. You know, this is what we know, this is what you know, and that will help to change. Because if I can educate you, when you're 20 years from now, when you're sitting in a position of authority, you have a different kind of an understanding about who Aboriginal people in Canada are, right? It's in university. But I'm out doing public education. Tomorrow I'm going to go speak to the Veterans Association. You know, next day we're going to do a screening at a high school, you know, on shielded mines. You know, like, that's public education. We're just trying to get everywhere we can. And I think that when you know something about Native community that is right, that you should share that information, right? So if you tell 10 people, right, that's 10 people more that know that it's not all bad, and it's not all a bunch of drunks, it's not all a bunch of suicides, it's not, that there are good things about the Native community that need to be carried forward.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? Okay, thanks, Cynthia.